Alright guys, I got my RTX 3080 laptop, the Eluktronics Prometheus XVII. We got our 5900 HX with a RTX 3080 right here, listed in Device Manager. Got our packaging right here. We got a lovely sports gaming mouse, Hive 65. We got our Covert Cans headset. And we got our large mouse pad, as well as a HDMI cable. Alright, everything's stock. We're going to run some Cinebench R20, see what kind of benchmark we get. We have our system monitor open and the hardware info open as well. We're going to see what it gets. Here we go. I'm just going to have these open while the benchmark runs in the background. So right up the top, we're in the 70s. Looks like our clocks are sitting around at about 3.9 gigahertz. And let's swap over to Cinebench now that we've determined that it's holding steady in the 70s. Let me get hardware info out of the way. Wow, that's pretty fast. That's just an 8-core, wow. And that's moving pretty fast, I'm not gonna lie. We'll see what the score is. 4,676 stock. That is impressive, and it was only hit about 71 degrees. So I had an Intel Core i7 10875H, and and I had to tune it like crazy, set the watt limits to 150 watts, and put thermal grizzly conductor on, do all kinds of crazy stuff to get that to score at 4,500 points. And this scores 4,600 points without breaking a sweat. And this is completely stock without having to do anything to the laptop. So I am very impressed with AMD right now. So as I was talking, I ran Cinebench R20 with a real-time mode just to see what if the score would change, and look at that. We almost hit 5,000 points. Again, no effort at all. So now we're running R20 single core, and we're running at 64C. Let me just minimize this, and we'll see what this benchmark turns out to result. So it looks like we managed to get 560 points on Cinebench R20. Now we're gonna run some small FFTs Prime 95, see how badly it slams the system. We're gonna keep an eye on the core clocks and the temperature, and we'll see how it performs. So clocks seem to be bouncing all over the place, but seems to be stabilizing at about 3.6 now. And CPU's heating up a little bit, but nothing too fancy actually. It's pretty good for Prime 95. It must be hitting some kind of current limit somewhere. And that's our core voltage under Prime 95 loads. It seems to bounce from about 1 volt to 0.8 a little bit. Now we're in 1.1. SoC voltage is nice and low at 0.95. But Cinebench R20 is an old benchmark, so now we're running R23. We're just going to do one pass on the multi-core, get the result, and then we're going to do the full 10-minute pass with the core, single core and multi. We're sitting tight at 3.9 gigahertz. Temperatures are a little higher this time, at about 74. And our SVI TFN core voltage seems to be reporting about 1.15. And here's our score. We scored 11,991 points for one run. During the single-threaded run of Cinebench R23, looks like we're sitting tight at about 1.425 or 1.45 volts. So we got our final single core result, which is 1,418 points. That's again stock, it's not overclocked. And then we'll do the multi-core next. And our 10-minute R23 score was 12,656. So now we're running 3D Mark Time Spy. We're under stock again. Clock's varying quite a bit. GPU starting to toast up a little bit. It looks like we're floating around 1480 megahertz, more or less. So I scored 10,542 points on Time Spy, 10,758 graphics, 9,466 CPU. It looks a little on the low end, but we haven't increased the TDP of the 3080 just yet. I will say this though, this is so smooth. I can't believe how smooth this is. Like, I'm so used to having stutter and all kinds of, you know, just choppy motion, but it's either the monitor or FreeSync or something, but man, this is the smoothest I've ever seen a computer. Wow. And we're getting 72, 75-ish FPS on the physics. So our score is 22,831, 25,545 graphics, 24,125 physics, and combined 12,164. Again, this is all at 120 watts for the 3080, and stock, not overclocked at all. So now we're going to play around with the settings and then see what we can get out of this thing. I must say, those clock speeds jumped up drastically as I increased the power limits to 150 watts. Wow, I am impressed. That is so much higher. Again, I have not touched the CPU clocks yet. I've just only increased the wattage of the TDP of the graphics card. So my new score is 23,681, quite a big jump, 26,465 graphics. Again, I have not touched the CPU. And for comparison to the next lowest score, they got scored 25,000. So it looks like I need to make some adjustments with a MSI Afterburner or however. So here's where we've adjusted our power targets. I've basically slid the sliders as far to the right as I could. Target temperature 87 as far as it goes. And then I moved the CPU sliders now as far as they go as well. See what happens. I'm gonna stress test it, see if everything checks out. So I adjusted these to 80 and 95. 95 is actually where that one was already at to begin with. And then I ran Cinebench and I scored 5,233 points on the multi-core. It's running the single core in the background right now. And upon completion of the first time, the screen kind of freaked out, and then noise was repeating over for a little bit, and then after that it kind of fixed itself. I couldn't tell if that's instability or not, because I ran it several more times after this and then it was perfectly fine. So I'm not sure what that was all about, whether maybe a driver was in the middle of installing. I hope. We'll find out, I guess. So that's our new adjusted score with those sliders maxed out. And then we'll do R23 yet again. So there's our R23 scores adjusted with those sliders up. And I can say now that this thing is functionally similar to a 9900K or a 10700K, more or less. Modern graphics cards must be something else. I've maxed out this memory clock slider all the way to 1500, and I still haven't seen any kinds of irregularities in the video. So that's pretty intense. Although the clocks have went down a little bit as the GPU temps are a little toasty. I don't know if you can see that. This is about 75, 76C. This has been running for a very long time. So the GPU does run pretty warm. So pretty much with all the sliders maxed out and running a plus 140 core overclock and a plus 1500 memory overclock, it appears we get 24,585 overall, 27,774 graphics, and 25,050 physics, and 13,000 combined. But I might have to play with the memory values. They say with the RTX 3000 series, lowering them sometimes can actually be more beneficial. So I'll have to play around with that, see what the optimal configuration is for the memory overclock. And here's how my scores compare to Eluktronics' own with the same CPU and same GPU. Their score is a bit higher than mine, but oh well. So here's my new Time Spy score: 11,991, 12,503 graphics, and 9,735 CPU. And this is how it compares to the next person up. As you can see, my score is a little lower than his, but that's okay. And for those who are interested, this is what the BIOS looks like. It's pretty locked down. There's no room for memory overclocking or anything fancy like that. At least it has the mux switch here, which we can change from hybrid to DGPU, and which I will do right now. See how that works. And so we toggled the mux switch. Now it's on the 3080 only. As you can see, we got all these options here, which we didn't have before because the Vega 8 was enabled, but now it's disabled, so now we have access to everything that we need. Alright, I'm going to run the benchmarks again, see if it makes any difference, and if not, then I'll move on to the next thing. Oh wow, so it looks like with the Vega 8 disabled, it performs drastically higher. 27,536 and 32,559 graphics, 25,427 physics, 13,548 combined. So this is a lot closer to what I've been seeing on the list of all similar laptops. And that's our new Time Spy score: 12,351, 12,955 graphics, 9,772 CPU score. I had to drop the memory clock very slightly to 1400 instead of 1500, and I was able to finish the test there. As for Port Royal, we scored 7,925. And we scored about 7,951 on superposition. So this laptop performs about on par with a 3060 Ti and a 5600X, if you give it a desktop equivalent. And on superposition 4K, I scored 10,826 points. So it appears our SSD is a Samsung PM991. There's the code right there. And this is its performance: 2,383 read, 1,683 write, and so on. As far as the RAM goes, it runs at 3200 CL22, typical JEDEC spec. We got 47,265 on the read. We got 42,169 on the write. We got 41,523 on the copy. And 81.8 on latency, which is a little ouch, but oh well. And these are the rest of the results. I don't know what type of RAM it is. I'd have to find out. Since the BIOS is locked down, only 1.2 volt RAM kits would work. So pretty much everything's going to run at JEDEC spec, which is these timings right here. So just keep that in mind if you're considering buying a 1.35 volt XMP kit, because you will not be able to enable XMP, as far as I know. So the laptop stands pretty high off the table, as you can see. Very well sufficiently propped up. Even then, I think it still suffers from very mild suffocation still. I don't know how, but I do hear a pitch change when I lift up the laptop, albeit a very, very slight change, not one that I would think that would be very easy to hear, but it does actually affect the temperatures very slightly. So the fans on this thing, they're really not that loud. I mean, I could have this on max fan mode for a very long time and it would not bother me at all. And the default fan profile is actually very enjoyable. I've had gaming laptops in the past that had insufferable fan profiles, and oh man, it really sucked. But this one, at least you can set your own profiles if you don't like the default one. Personally, I think the default one is completely fine, but to each their own. So the RGB is nothing too fancy. All the keyboard colors move together at once. They don't move individually, as far as I know. These little corner lights, you could change the color, but they don't do anything fancy either, as far as I know. But for a device like this, you don't really pay for fancy RGB or a fancy looking machine, you just pay for the hardware. All in all, it's a monster machine. That power brick actually does a pretty good job with the BIOS regulating the power, and it's able to run the 3080 at 150 watts. It seems to be full time. It doesn't ever seem to go down. So that's pretty great. I'm impressed. But this wasn't really meant to be a review or anything. I haven't gone through keyboard strokes or the webcam or any of that other stuff that I probably should get through. But again, it wasn't intended to be a review. But anyway, thanks for watching, and shout out to Eluktronics for upgrading me from the 5800H to the 5900HX. I think that's amazing. That's great customer service. Thank you, Eluktronics. Thank you so much. But that's enough of that. It's time to play some games and do some video editing. Thanks for watching, guys. Later.